Hi there, I'm Chris Hanlon, and today we're going to go through an introduction to pitching. So what I want to do is to give you an idea about what pitching's all about, why it is so scary to so many people, and why you shouldn't really be scared about it, and all the benefits that doing pitching well can give you in your business or your nonprofit or whatever it is that you're engaged in, whatever project it is. Pitching's important to anything you do, and it's something that we use all the time. I've been involved with making films and short films and that sort of thing. You've got to pitch people to get some funding to get that film made. You've got to pitch actors to say, hey, you should be in this film, give me some of your time, particularly when it's an amateur film and we're not paying them a lot. And we have to pitch the crew, and we have to pitch other people to get the film made. So that's just one small example. But in a business, you're often pitching your ideas against somebody else's ideas. And in your own business, if you have your own business, often you're going to be pitching for that. Nonprofits, likewise, you may be pitching for donors. You may be pitching to get people to help you on a voluntary basis, whatever it is you're doing. And of course, startups. I do a lot of work with startups, and startups, there's a lot of pitching involved. And pitching makes people quite concerned, but it's not as bad as it's made out to be, or as you make it out to be yourself. And we'll go through that shortly. So today, this is going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be pretty low level. I want to get a good foundation for you. What you're going to have by the end of this session today is an understanding what pitching is and what it isn't. And some of the key things that if you just nail these 2-3 key things really well, you're going to have a huge return on your effort that you put into your pitch, as opposed to not doing these few things really well and having mediocre results or no results at all. So that's what we're going to do. So let's have a quick look at what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover what is pitching, which is pretty much what I've just done, really. Why is it scary? And the don'ts and the do's. That's effectively it. We'll go into a little bit more detail. But yeah, we will go through what is pitching. What is pitching? As I said, pitching, the big thing about pitching is that you're not just entertaining someone. So a TEDx talk can be quite an entertaining event. You can learn, you as the audience might learn something the speaker is teaching you. But the difference with a pitch is at the pitch, there's an ask. At the end of the pitch, they're going to ask you to do something as an audience. They're going to ask you, the audience, to do something. Now, not everybody will be asked. Like, it might not be for everyone in the audience. They might say, if you're a teenager in the audience, we'd like you to do this, right? They're pitching the teenagers in the audience. Obviously, if you're not a teenager in that audience, it doesn't really apply to you, right? So that's the baseline of what a pitch is. A pitch is a presentation with an ask at the end. Now, if the ask is the big thing, well, don't you just jump on stage and ask for something? Hey, give me a load of money to start my business. No, the pitch has to be structured in such a way that it grabs the attention of the audience, it entertains and educates the audience. And I say that very specifically because you always want to be entertaining your audience. You want to be keeping them engaged. You want to keep them interested in what is happening on stage, what you're saying. The cardinal sin of any sort of presentation is to be boring. You do not want to be boring, right? So you need to be entertaining. And when I say educating them, educational, you don't want to be getting into professorial sort of lecture. You don't want to be lecturing them. But the point is that if they knew everything that you're about to tell them, then they would already be in a position to make the decision. And you could probably just jump up and ask the question. The reality is that before you ask the question, you have the ask for the audience, you need to educate them around a whole bunch of things around that ask so that ask makes sense. And there's context in that, okay? So again, what is pitching? It's a presentation that educates and entertains the audience, and it's educating them towards the question which you're going to ask at the end, because there's an ask at the end of every pitch. That's all the pitch is. That's all it is. It's just a little bit of information with an ask at the end. Now, why is pitching scary? Well, the biggest thing I think, and you can tell me if you think this is true or not, and we'll do some Q&A after this, and you can let me know what you think, whether I'm on the money or not. But one of the big things I think that pitching is scary is because it's got that ask at the end. And most of us aren't used to asking for something. We're not real comfortable about saying, hey, can you please do this? I mean, I know I'm, maybe it's my generational thing or whatever, but I know that I don't ask for trouble. I ended up going at like 3 o'clock in the morning to a hospital, and I didn't want to wake up any of my flatmates at the time because they were asleep and I just didn't want to be a bother. So I'm walking up to A&E because I didn't trust myself to drive. That's how much pain I was in. I had a stomach ache. Actually, it turns out to be a kidney stone. I didn't know what it was at the time. And I woke up in the middle of the night sweating and feeling really bad. So I go up and I'm walking to A&E, and I'm bending over. I'm absolutely just trying not to like crawl. I was that bad. It was ridiculous. And a street sweeper, because, you know, middle of the night type thing, comes around the corner, and I'm standing up. Nothing wrong here. I don't need any help. I'm fine. And then as soon as the guy was out of view, I'm like, again. And I got to the A&E and I was fine. Anyway, the point is that most of us don't like to ask for things. We're not wired that way, right? And if you are, that's fantastic. You're going to do well in business or whatever other projects you're going to put together. But I think that is one of the biggest reasons why we see pitching as a scary thing, right? And so what I want you to do is you don't need to think of it as that scary. And we'll talk about why in a couple of in this session. So I'm not going to go through it all now, but that's one of the reasons people think it's scary. The other is just that whole confidence thing of getting on stage. Like for some people, pitching is scarier than getting up and telling a joke in front of people or doing like a TEDx talk. But for people doing a presentation, a TEDx talk or anything like that, all of it's scary, right? And that comes down to a lot of times confidence. Now, I'd love to be paid $1 for every time somebody said, oh, how can I be more confident when I get on stage? And the best answer I've ever been able to give people, I'm always looking for a better answer, but the best I've got really at the moment is confidence comes from competence. The more prepared you are with what it is you're going to say and structured it out and know how the flow is of what you're going to say, the more competent you are with that, the more thought you've given it, the more practice you've given it, the more confident you are, right? Now, we all have had times where we go, I can wing it, I'm confident, and I've done this. I've been very guilty of this in the past. Yeah, no problem, I can do that. And I've gone out and I've done an underwhelming job, right? And afterwards, I'm absolutely kicking myself. Beforehand, I thought I was going to be fine, but that competence wasn't there. I didn't put in the time or the effort of the work beforehand. So a lot of times that confidence thing comes down to just doing the work, just practicing, working out exactly what it is you want to say, and why you're doing a pitch in the first place. See, if you're doing a talk, sometimes, well, it's not true. You really do need to know why you're giving a talk. But pitches are even more so. You really need to know what it is exactly that you want out of this pitch. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to achieve from this pitch? And there may be a couple of levels for that. So you may be pitching at one level, you go, I want the investment. But if I don't get the investment, because I know there's only 2 people in this room of 50 people that are willing to invest. So that's my primary, is to get those 2 people to consider investing with me. But my secondary is all the other 50 people. I want them to go, wow, that's a cool idea. And I want them to tell their friends, right? I'm not saying that should be your thing. That might be your thing, right? And it all depends on what it is that your project needs, where you're at, and who your audience is too, because it might be that the people in your audience are not the right people to either invest or be involved in your project. And so in that case, you want them to act as influencers to bring other people in, maybe. I don't know. So summarize, why is pitching scary? It's scary because there's an ask at the end of it. And most of us don't like asking for things, but we'll cover that in a bit on how you can overcome that. It's scary because you're not very confident, and confidence comes from competence. And we'll go through a few things that will help you with that. Okay, misconceptions. These are some of the misconceptions that I see about pitching, which also adds to that stress and that fear factor. And the first one I've got here is one shot. What I mean by one shot is that too many times, or often, people think that this pitch is it. I get the one chance, my one shot at it. And if I screw it up, it's all over and I can't do it again, right? Or that I've got to either get them to say yes today or it's a no forever. It's simply not true. That's not true. And if you have that mindset, you are just putting ridiculous amount of pressure on yourself, because it's just not going to work like that. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, reiterate it, but I'll preface it here now. Your pitch is the opening of a relationship. It's the start of a relationship. It's that the one shot thing would be akin to me saying, I'm going on a date, and if the date goes well, we get married. First date. Nobody does that. That's stupid. That's not going to happen, right? Might lead to that at some point, but you're not going to have, it's not a one shot. You're not going to have one date and get married. Equally, you're not going to have one pitch and get invested, right? Or whatever it is your projects is after. So take that off the table. Get away from that thinking. It's not a one shot. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we can structure where your pitch lies and what it is you want to achieve with your pitch. So that's one of the things that adds to the fear factor. The next misconception I see with pitching is it's sterile. And by sterile, I mean no personality. People think that you have to effectively be a robot. You've got to get up there and say everything correctly and absolutely right and use the big words and all the rest of it. And that's not true either. People connect with people. Get on stage and be a person. Like, that's what you want to do. Be yourself. Nobody else can be you. And if you're not trying to be anyone but yourself, then you can't be an imposter, right? So just be you. Be yourself. If you're a bit quirky, you're a bit quirky. If you are a little bit accountancy and that is you, that's fine. Just be you. Don't try to be something you're not. So sadly, if you have very little personality, don't try to inject personality in there. Don't try to make jokes where you're not really the joking type, because it just comes across as a false note. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't come across right. Just be you. If you're a funny guy, be funny. If you're not a funny guy, be straight up. Whatever. No judgment. Doesn't matter. Just be yourself. So, but the point is that it isn't, and in this last one on that list is quite similar to sterile, the formula. There isn't a formula. There's no standard way a pitch should go, right? We'll talk about some of the things you can do to make your pitch better and structure and the important things about that. But don't think it has to be down to a formula. We do that a lot with a bunch of incubators that I go to. They basically give them a slide deck, and they say, fill in the slide deck. You're going to have these 5 slides in this order, and this is what you're going to talk about, right? And the pitches that come out the best, because they have to use those 5 slides, it's the story they weave around those 5 slides that makes it stand out and makes them have the success they have, right? So don't get caught up in the formula or the sterile. And then the third one I've got in the middle there is hard numbers. Hard numbers, by that I mean, you know, people have a tendency to think that the people on the other end of the pitch, all they want is the numbers, and they don't think about the story, or they don't think they want the story. Trust me, everybody needs the story. There's a story to what it is you're trying to achieve with your project. There is a story to why you're involved with your project. When we're finding speakers for TEDx Ruakura, one of the questions we ask, so we get a whole bunch, up to 150 people apply to speak at any given event. And we only take roughly 10 speakers. We've had as many as 12. It's usually around 10 speakers, right? So we've got to do a lot of cutting down. So we'll go through and we'll go out and we'll cut it down to a short list of about 25, 30, something like that. And we'll send them out, say, hey, we're interested in your topic. I want you to answer 3 questions. What is it you're talking about? Why is that important? And why are you the person that should be talking about it? Now, those are the stories, right? What is it all about? Context of the whole deal. Why is it important? And when you're pitching often, and particularly startups, it's why is it important now? But why is it important? And then why you? Why would I invest in you rather than somebody else with the same idea or similar idea? Why you? And it doesn't matter what your pitch is, whether it's sort of a generic get involved with this community project type pitch, or whether it is I'm getting investment for a startup. What you want to do is you definitely want to include in there a little bit of that story about how you got involved in this project and why it's important to you, right? Because that's going to drive a lot of other people jumping on board with you or not. So that's really important. So make sure that you include that. All right, I think we've spent enough time on that. Let's move on. So here's some of the common mistakes that people make with their pitching. And again, remember, confidence comes from competence. So the more of these mistakes we can eradicate, the more clarity you have, the more confident you'll be when you jump on stage to give a pitch. All right. So most common mistakes, the biggest one by far, and I've been guilty of it. I think everybody's been guilty of it at one point or another, right? And that's to have a fuzzy outcome, not being absolutely crystal clear about what it is you want for your outcome. So this is what normally happens. This is where people fall over. They have a business, they're doing stuff in their business. Somebody says, you should come and speak to our group of whatever. I have an audience, jump up and tell them about it. Sure, I'll do that. They get carried away with the business. Oh, crap, it's tonight. They jump up and they're not exactly sure what they want from these people in the audience. They may not even know if those audience are potential customers of theirs or potential investors or whatever it is that you're after, whether they're potential donors for the project or volunteers or whatever it is that you're after. So you need to be crystal clear. Okay, the first question you ask before you even start writing your pitch is, what do I want? Why am I doing this? What do I want out of this whole pitch thing? And maybe do a primary and a secondary. You know, like I said before, primary is I want investment. Secondary is those that can't invest, I want them to be so impressed they want to tell their friends, right? And the key to that is the secondary can never take away from the primary. Primary You might drop the secondary, but there's always got to be the one, the primary. Okay, so you must have clarity of outcome before you even start, all right? I could beat that to death, but you get the point. Okay, the second biggest mistake is that they have, let's assume you've got your clarity, you know what it is, but the person giving the pitch gets so carried away in what they want, they're not even thinking about what the customer or the audience wants or thinks, right? They're not thinking about the audience. And you need to put yourself in the shoes of the audience. So at the beginning, you go, right, what is this going to do for me? What do I want out of the pitch? I want investment. I want donors. I want volunteers. I just want people to sign up for this community project. Whatever it is, that's fine. Second, okay, what does the audience want out of this pitch? If I was an audience member and I didn't know what I know about my thing, what would I want to know? How would I want that to be told? What sort of order and stuff would I tell that in? Is there a really cool story that would interest them? And we'll talk about that in a sec. But basically, the audience benefit. What is the audience going to get out of it? So one of the things we do with TEDx Recruiter is that we make sure that we get them all to do, I call it an audience promise. And it's basically, I frame it like this. You've just given your talk. It's at the end of the talk, and you're giving your bow to a sort of thing. There's a standing ovation. Everybody's clapping. And you're going off the stage. They're getting out of their seats because it's break time. I want to know, what do they know now that they didn't know before? So what does the audience know? What are they feeling right now as a result of your talk? And what are they going to do as a result of your talk? So what are they going to do, know, and feel? That's what we want to bring into reality for them by the end of that talk. Your talk is going to make them feel this way. It's going to make them think this way or know this thing that they didn't know before. And it's going to give them the impetus to do this thing, right? Now, you don't have to go into that much detail in your pitch, but it does help. So once you've got that, now that audience promise, I don't tell the audience. That's not something that is explicit. It's not something I ever say to anyone. That's just for me to know when I'm putting my talk together or my pitch together. Okay, I want them to feel inspired by the end of this. I want them to learn that there's this problem in the world that they probably never even realized, and it can be really easily solved. And I want them to sign up to be part of this project that's going to help people with this. Simple. So now I've got the audience, I've got my outcome, and I've got the audience outcome. How are we going to get them there? And the next thing you want is a hook. So what's a hook? A hook is something that really captures somebody's attention. So if you ever did any work in advertising or copywriting, that sort of thing, one of the first things they talk about all the time is the headline, because the headline's a hook. A really good headline will get you to go, must find out more about that. And we all know what clickbait is, right? It's those headlines that you just know it's a load of crap, but you can't help yourself and you got to click on it anyway. You've done it. I've done it. I still kick myself while I'm doing it. I'm going to regret this, but I have to. It's such a good hook. Now, you want to have a bit of a hook. Now, it doesn't have, I'm not saying it should be clickbaity, although who knows? But a good hook will get people to think outside of what they normally think. So it might be an incongruous stat, a stat that is like, really? That can't be right. That sort of statistic is quite a good hook. It could be a rhetorical question, a question that just makes people think, oh, never thought about that. All those things are hooks. Now, I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail because I could actually spend half an hour on hooks alone. So we're not going to go there today. But a hook is really important. So getting something that captures their imagination at the beginning is really important. And one of the ways you can capture their imagination is just to tell a story. And it might be the story of how you came across this issue or this project or how you got involved with something like that. Could be that. All right. Common mistakes. We talked about it before. No personality. You absolutely need to have that personality spark in there and be yourself. Again, be yourself. And then finally, I've got here, you've got an issue around structure. Now, this is a tough one because too much structure can be a problem and too little structure can be a problem. Now, too little structure is where you just start telling them things, but they're not lining up. You need to give people context. Everybody needs the context for the information that they're giving, you're giving them, or I'm giving you, right? So without context, information loses its value, right? So to give them valuable information, you've got to give them context. To give them context, you've got to structure it in the right way. Now, that might mean that I can't talk about X until I've explained Y first, right? So let's go with Y and then we can talk about X. So you've got to work that out in your head and work it out on the page beforehand. Too much structure can just kill it because you're just trying to say too many things in one time is probably the biggest problem. The point is, most pitches are really short. I should have mentioned this before. Most pitches are really short. A 15-minute pitch would be, I consider, a long pitch. Most pitches around 5, even less. But a 15-minute pitch is a decent-sized pitch. That's still very short. If you've got a whole project and a whole problem that you're solving and a new way of solving it, that's a lot of information to get across in that shorter period of time. And you're not going to just do that in one go. It just doesn't happen. We have a lot of, obviously, TEDx speakers come on, and these are people that have been working in their field for years and years, decades, some cases. And we're saying, right, we want you to give us the best information you've got, and you've got 15 minutes. And you can see the color drain from the faces of these professors, like, how? That's just not even possible. And so that's a structure thing. That's all that is about. Anyway, I'm getting a bit carried away here. Let's moving on. So the first thing is, this is part of my philosophy that I think will make it easier. So there's a few things that will help you. First is, your pitch is to just starting a conversation with the audience. This is what I say to the TEDx guys as well. That professor we just talked about, who's like, I've got 20 years of knowledge and I want to put it across in 15 minutes. You're not going to. All you can do is excite their imagination, get them interested and get them wanting to find out more. Then they'll come back to you. They'll buy your book, whatever it is. They'll get in touch and then they'll learn more. Same with the pitch. If you were a startup and you wanted $250,000 investment, I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's unlikely you're going to do one pitch and somebody's going to just sign the check and give it to you. You're going to do the pitch and then they go, that was really interesting. We need to catch up and have a coffee. And it may be 2 or 3 more connections like that. As I've written here, think of it like a first date. That pitch is the first date. And all you really want is a second date. You don't want the wedding ring on the first date. You just want the next thing, right? So if you take that on board and go, the pitch is just an introduction. It's an introduction to what I'm all about. It's an introduction to the project, and we're going to get some people excited about it, and then we're going to let them know what the next step is. And that might be your outcome for your pitch. But we'll get to that in a second. All right, so that's the philosophy. I love this quote by Robert Collier. I'll move out of the way so you can see his name, Robert Collier. And he was an advertising guy. And basically his quote was, you always want to enter the conversation that's already taking place in the customer's mind. Think about that. You may have heard that quote before, but it's a very powerful quote, because what it's saying is you want to be thinking that, hey, look, those people in the audience already are thinking something. Now, if you, we're talking about climate, maybe. If you're talking about climate, then you're going to have more people these days going, climate change is real. Now, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you might have had people going, 50% of the room saying, I don't think climate change is real, right? And so whatever pitch you were giving, you would have to address it or couch it in those terms. These days, I think I would be surprised if, if it was less than 95% of people who go, yeah, no, climate change is real, right? Because we can see it all happening everywhere, right? So where are they at? What are they thinking? And if we'll stick with the climate analogy, then you go a little bit more granular. Okay, they know climate change is real, but one of the big things that I'm guessing a lot of people will be thinking is, but it's too big for me. I'm one person. I can't do anything. I can't change anything. I'm powerless, right? Now, if that's one of the things that is in their mind, it won't be something they think about every day, but it's subconsciously in their mind. You need to address that in your pitch, or you want to address that. It will obviously make it a little bit better if you can address that in your pitch. Okay, so always enter that conversation that's already taking place in your mind. Spend a little bit of time when you're working out your pitch going, what will people be thinking about this? What do they already know about this? What are their common misconceptions about this? So you might be saying, well, paper cups are okay because they are compostable, so it doesn't matter how many paper cups we use. Well, that might be a misconception, because you're saying it's actually the cost of making them and the manufacturing that's creating all the climate gases or whatever, right? So what are the misconceptions? What do you need to change the way they're thinking? But in order to change that, you've got to know what the thinking fits. You've got to spend the time doing that. And again, circling back, this is all part of that competence piece. Once you know, most people are thinking this, and this is the information that will change their thought or make them question that or whatever it is, you're starting to have real concrete information to share with people. That's where your competence has gone up, and your confidence will naturally grow with that. Okay, so you put in that work, you're going to feel much better about it. And finally, basically the ask. There has to be an ask. We've talked about that. That's the whole point of a pitch. A pitch without an ask is just a talk. And that's not to say talks aren't of value, but we're talking about pitches specifically today. So there must be an ask. But it doesn't have to be the ultimate ask. If you are concerned about this, if this is something that's worrying, a real worry to you, then just drop your ask back. Make your put out the information about the project you're leading or whatever it is you're doing, and say, I'm looking for people who want to jump on board this train and go along on this project with me. There's a whole range of things you could do or couldn't do, just get in touch. And so my ask today is simply to go to our website and sign up on the form, and we'll send you more information. It could be that. I don't know. I don't know what your ask is. You've got to know what your ask will be. But if you're worried about saying, I want donations of $200,000 to get this project off the ground, then, don't ask for that. Say, we're looking for a whole range of people. We're looking for donors because we do need, some money to make this thing happen. We're also looking for a bunch of volunteers and anyone who's got a platform that can sort of share this information with people. That would be great. That could be your ask. So don't let that put you off. Don't be afraid of the ask and it pushing you down and making you think, oh my God, I can't do this. right? Don't go there. Don't be that person. All you need to do is think about, okay, I know what it is my outcome is going to be. We talked about that. You know what your outcome is going to be. You know what your audience is already thinking, and you know what the journey you want to take them on, what they're going to leave with, what they're going to understand and know at the end of the presentation or the pitch that they didn't know at the beginning of the pitch. Then you're going to give them all of that, a little bit of personality, tell them a story or two, right? Just be yourself. Tell them why this project is important, who it's going to help, why it's important to you, and why are you the person to be talking about it? Why are you on the stage? Why are you pitching? Why? Because people really want to know that. And you really want to know that when you're listening to other people. You don't think about it, but if those questions aren't answered in the pitch, oftentimes you'll get up to leave and you go, I don't know what it was about that. It didn't really speak to me. It's because those questions weren't answered, right? Even subconsciously, you're asking those questions. Why is it important? And why is that person the person to be talking about it, right? So answer those questions for yourself, answer them for the audience. All right, and then finally, just because I want to do what I say, there's my ask. If you want to catch up with me, or connect with me on LinkedIn, more than happy to help you out with any other questions you have. There's LinkedIn there. I'll move out of the way a little bit so you can see that. And you can get hold of me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to help you out further. We're going to do some Q&A, I believe, now. So I will catch you there.